I've said it in previous videos, but the violence and dangerous rhetoric and incitement to violence that the left typically accuses everyone who's not them of practicing and oppressing the rest of the world with are the exact political tools that the left themselves use on a daily basis. We've got far left entities like BLM, Antifa, woke corporations, activist journalists masquerading as being part of the mainstream, celebrities and athletes claiming victimhood just like AOC, and openly praising violent attacks against anyone right of the far left. But if you ask companies like Twitter, violence against people you disagree with is A-OK. As long as it targets the right people. I've said it once and I'll say it again. It's the left. It's always been the left. Hey everybody, thanks for joining me one more time for Things That Need to Be Said, if they actually let you see this video. For MRC TV, I'm Nick Kangadis. So I mentioned socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez at the top, so let's just get her dumb ass out of the way.
Look, like, honestly, gardening, food, that comes out of dirt. Like, it's magic.
AOC never seems to have a problem with activists looting and burning down private businesses and government buildings, but she says that the trauma they endured from the events at the Capitol in January has put her in therapy. And by the way, Ocasio-Smollett wasn't even in the Capitol building at the time. I'm not downplaying therapy or someone's need for it, but AOC seems to be using the real reason she's in therapy as a tool to display whatever trauma she thinks she went through back in January. Quote, "I feel like I learned this the hard way after my father passed away when I was a teenager. That happened at a young age and I socked it away. I had to live with that for years," unquote. So, I feel bad that she lost her father at a young age, but to use her daddy issues as a way to somehow say that the main reason for her therapy sessions are because of the events at the Capitol is disingenuous and manipulative. But to be fair, disingenuous and manipulative are part of communists and the establishment's way of doing things. This is just the tip of the iceberg. The left constantly talks about January 6th as if every politician and leftist in the country had been murdered, even though the only person that in reality was murdered was Trump supporter Ashley Babbitt. Even though kind of fact checker PolitiFact reported that the stance that only one person died at the Capitol on January 6th, they go on in a summary that in fact only Babbitt died on January 6th. Talk about misinformation. This goes into the hypocrisy of the overarching theme I'm talking about. The left will constantly rail that white supremacists, who are apparently the entirety of Republicans if you ask them, are killing people of color by the thousands, even though the true number is only in the double digits at best. Meanwhile, the left will make excuses for the large portion of their swath that routinely calls for harm to come to anyone that isn't part of the left. Take singer-songwriter Richard Marx. Go figure, his last name is Marx. But take this guy that no one has heard of in at least 25 years. He goes on Twitter and offers to buy a drink for the maniac who savagely assaulted Rand Paul a few years ago. And Marx isn't the only one celebrating the physical harm that came to Paul. Scumbags like Ilhan Omar and Tom Arnold got some yucks out of the beating Paul took. Heck, the mysterious package that Paul received at his family's home the other day had a note that read, quote, "I'll finish what your neighbor started, you MFer." Unquote. Congresswoman Maxine Waters once admitted that she threatens Trump supporters, quote, "all the time," unquote. Here's another quote from her. Quote, "What bothered me so much was they tried to frame that as violence," unquote. Waters should know about framing things people say as violence. She's done it many times before. She probably just came down with a severe case of Biden and forgot all about it.
All men and women created by you know the thing.
And speaking of violence, how about that Bernie Sanders supporter who opened fire on Republicans and almost killed Steve Scalise? Was that leftist violence, or did the evil gun fire itself like they always seem to think it does? Listen. The right isn't completely innocent of wrongdoing, ever, but they're not constantly making stuff up to cover for their own violence. They sometimes freely admit it. However, the amount of leftist violence makes the amount of violence on the right make the right look like amateurs who should take notes from the left when it comes to violence. Lee Harvey Oswald was an open communist who once traveled to Moscow in the late 1950s to try and defect and become a Soviet citizen. Sirhan Sirhan, the man who shot and killed Robert F. Kennedy, reportedly, quote, stated he killed Robert Kennedy because the senator had supported Israel in the Arab-Israeli War of 1967, unquote. Fast forward to current day, and who seems to be the primary supporters of Hamas? I mean, Palestinians. You guessed it, the far left. CNN even reported once upon a time that Squeaky Fromm, the woman who tried to assassinate Republican President Gerald Ford and one of Charles Manson's cult members, quote, wanted to be heard on issues including the environment, unquote. In the 1960s and 70s, the communist group Weather Underground were known to use bombs as their weapons of choice in opposition to the Vietnam War. One of their members, Bill Ayers, went on to become a college professor and close friend of former President Barack Obama. There's also the KKK, who were originally formed to combat Republicans who ended slavery in the Reconstruction era. According to History.com, quote, its members waged an underground campaign of intimidation and violence at white and black Republican leaders, unquote. And oh yeah! How about John Wilkes Booth? The New York Times reported in 1981 that, quote, he hoped to bring about a revolution that would save the South at last and avert America's biracial future, unquote, by assassinating the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln. And remember when Madonna told a crowd that numbered in the six figures about her thoughts?
Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Violence is a tool used by people who feel words aren't enough to get their message across, no matter how little of an argument these people had in the first place. The right has had their share of political violence, but the left has perfected it with hundreds of years of practice. So, what do you all think out there? Were these things that needed to be said? Let me know in the comments, where I do read most and reply to some. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel on Rumble. If you like this video, don't forget to comment, share, and give it a thumbs up. Those are the best ways to help these videos reach more people, and it's the best way to let us know you want us to keep these videos coming. Subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so that YouTube might actually let you know when MRC TV comes out with a new video if they haven't censored it or taken it down yet. Like us on Facebook and check out more of our work at MRCTV.org. For MRC TV, I'm Nick Kangadis.